Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday to you. This is Mark Collier here with my friend Crystal Aguila right here next to me. Thank you for being my co-host today. It's good to have you. And today we're going to be talking all things silhouette. And Crystal's going to be teaching this summer at our conference, August 28th through the 30th in Grapevine, Texas. And she's going to be teaching how to use silhouette. And so if you're coming to the conference, you'll be able to choose that class among many others. And I think that this is something for a lot of you that's going to be very, very helpful. So if you guys are here, I see a bunch of people already jumping on. As you have any questions for Crystal or for me, you can put them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to all of them. And if you're watching this later on demand, if you can't make it live, if you're working or doing whatever you got to do, you can watch this later on demand. And you can also ask questions as well then, and we'll do our best to get to them as we're able. I see Tabitha Richardson's here. Brianne Dutra's here. Good to see you guys. But let us know what questions you have as we get going here. So before we jump into several tips that Crystal's got for us, let me just make sure. I know that everybody doesn't know Crystal. So Crystal, introduce yourself real quick. Kind of tell us how you got started with lasers. And you've also got a podcast people need to check out. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into some questions.
Okay. So I'm Crystal Aguila. I got my first laser 6 years ago. No, almost 7. Wow. So 2018, I got a Glow Forge, and then kind of the rest is history from there. I was self-taught in silhouette. I wanted to use silhouette because I did vinyl work and t-shirt work before, and I hate learning new softwares. So when I found out that I could use silhouette for my laser as well, I was sold, because then it meant I only had to learn the laser and not also a software that went along with the laser. And then I started selling files because people were asking to buy them. And then soon after that, my husband had this great idea of us doing a laser podcast. So we've been doing that for about 4 years now. We just celebrated 200 episodes a couple months ago. And then the Silhouette for Lasers course came out sometime during that as well, where I teach, start to finish, all the basics of silhouette that you need to do laser designs and how to make several of your own. Earrings, keychains, signs, pretty much everything except tumblers. And then, keychain thingies. I don't know if I mentioned that, but then that came around. I wanted them because I was sick of jump rings. Yes. And I realized a lot of other people wanted them as well. So, I think that's most of the things.
And you have a couple things going on.
Just a little bit, yeah.
That's great. I'm going to throw a couple things on the screen for everybody. You've got a lot of places that they can contact you, and I put them all in the description of the video here so you guys can check it out too. But you can find her at keychainthingies.com. Talk about a little tool that doesn't seem like much that's really great.
Yeah, no, it for me, it was actually, a lot of like inventions, which I didn't invent these, by the way, I just found them. But they come out of necessity. So I was having issues with my hands and mobility, and doing 75 jump rings for a consignment store for like cheap keychains that I was selling for like $5, if that, because they were just scrap material, tiny little 1-inch keychains. I literally had to ice my hands for like 2 days because it was just so painful because of my hand issues. And I ordered a keychain from Sticker Mule, the little, actually, here's one right here. I ordered keychains from Sticker Mule, and I saw this little thing attached, and I was like, what is this, and where do I find it?
Yes.
And so then, that snowballed into me finding them, getting them in every single color, and now I have 4 different styles in every possible color that I can. But they just save so much time. I honestly think they look better in some ways, especially when you can like match a color in the design to, your keychain. It just adds like an extra, fun element to it. And they're just easy. So
that's great. I love it. I see someone in the chat said they're having trouble with audio, but I can hear it myself. Guys, let me know if you're having any trouble with
Oh,
audio. It may be just one person, maybe a bunch. So let me know if anybody has any trouble. But yeah,
my
keychain
husband
thing is
said he can hear it fine over there on his
okay.
headphones.
Excellent. Very
So
good. Well,
hopefully,
definitely let us know if you have any tech issues at
yes,
all. We'll do
please.
our best to help out with that. So keychain thingies are great. And you can check them out at keychainthingies.com. You can also go to her group, Silhouette for Lasers, which
Yep.
is it's a really friendly place. I really like
Mhm.
it. Some nice people. I'm sure it's not
Couple.
because of the leader. That's not the reason. I'm sure. You have a great community that's just great for people to ask any questions they have.
Thank
And then we'll get back to this at the end also as well, but you can follow her at Riley Black Designs uh, on Instagram as well. There's several other ones. I'm not going to put them all on the
you.
screen.
Really
They're in
haven't.
the link there. So check that out. So let us know for in the chat. Let us know, for everybody, if you are using Silhouette. I'd love to know how many people are out there that are using it. You might be using it as your main design program, which is great. You might be using it in conjunction with something else, right? Like maybe you do what I do, and like for me, for example, I use Illustrator, but then I create it over there, and then I open it in Lightburn to run it on my
Yes.
laser, or I create it here and I open it in my Glowforge or
Mhm.
whatever. And that's what a lot of people do with Silhouette, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I do. For some reason, a lot of people love Lightburn, and I love Lightburn for running my laser, but for actual design, it just does not work with my brain when I'm trying to look for just simple things like offset or whatever. I don't know
Yeah,
where to look. I don't know what
yeah,
it's called. They're called different things. And so it's not intuitive for me personally. So
yeah,
anytime I need to make even a simple change, I'll go back to Silhouette, make that change because it takes me 2 seconds, resave my file, and then reopen it in Lightburn. So I always upload into Lightburn. I very rarely do any kind of design in Lightburn just because, again, it's what I'm comfortable with and what I
yeah.
already know. So I haven't needed to, learn Lightburn in that sense because, I've had a laser that needed Lightburn for 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I've been fine just importing.
Michelle says, I use Silhouette for most things now, but I need to rewatch the course because I definitely forget parts of it I don't use very often.
Well, and
First of all, you are
yeah,
not alone, Michelle. We all forget stuff.
that's the best part about it is that, you will always have that as a resource to go back to. When you're watching the course,
Yeah.
especially for the first time, it's really just so that you know that certain things are in there. But then when it comes time where you have a design that you need to subtract or you need to weld or you need to do a certain tool, you go back to that section
Yes.
of the course and get your little refresher. And then again, some people still have questions because I can't cover absolutely every single question in the course. If you
Yeah.
still have questions after you watch that section or otherwise, like, I don't come ask me, send me a message, post in the group. And most of the time I can help.
That's really great. And I think Diane is very similar to a lot of people is
Mm,
you may use a couple different combinations of things, and that's okay. Whatever gets you there is great.
yep.
She said I use Glowforge and Silhouette for quick stuff. Totally get it.
Mhm.
And then Ryan says Silhouette is my go-to, and then I import to Lightburn. Yeah, lots of
Yep.
people do that. Uh, Excellent. Oh, yeah, Michelle. I will say that you made it easy to get back to certain sections, which I so appreciate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks for the feedback.
absolutely. And Mary says, started using Silhouette before I got my lasers and use it for easy designs. I know there's so much more I need to learn. Uh, yes,
Yeah.
probably, but you're not alone.
Hmm.
And people like Crystal are here for you, and her
I
whole
mean,
community is here for you.
full transparency, I learned a lot while making the course because I was familiarizing myself with certain tools that I didn't necessarily use that much or didn't really come up in the things that I had designed. And
Yeah,
then when I was like, okay, I'm going to cover literally every single tool if it can apply to laser, designs in some way. And there was even fancy things that I learned how to do with like the knife tool. You can cut something and either leave the cut open ended or do the knife tool and it'll be solid. and
Yeah.
a closed path. So little things like that. I don't know if I knew that I didn't know the full extent of the options until I was like diving deep so that I covered as much as I could for the course.
I
So
love that.
even me, there's things I don't necessarily know or know that well because it's just not something that's I've needed to know.
I love it. And you're going to cover one in just a few minutes here that we both laugh about that. I will
Yeah.
tell you, it, sometimes the greatest tips are the small ones that make a
Mm-hmm.
huge difference. You
Totally.
don't realize how one little tip could change the way that you work throughout your day. And you're going to
Yeah.
hit one for me, but hopefully we'll hit some other ones for other people too.
Yeah.
So one more thing before we jump in, I'll let you get your screen ready while
Okay.
I'm saying this too. See if you can multitask for me.
I'll try.
For people who have not chosen a design program that they prefer yet, like a lot of Glowforge owners, maybe they don't want to use the Glowforge interface. Maybe they want to use something else. Heck, maybe they've got an X tool and they don't prefer XCS for whatever reason. That's okay too. If they're looking for something and you've not chosen anything, how much does Silhouette cost? First of all, and would you recommend it? I mean, of course, I know you will, but what does Silhouette cost? Where can they find it?
So Silhouette, you'll first want, if you don't already have, let me minimize this so if you don't already have a Silhouette vinyl cutter, the basic software comes with the vinyl cutter. But if you don't already have that, you can download the basic software for free. And then with laser designs, you have to export as SVG. And in order to be able to export as SVG, you do need to upgrade to the business edition. And the business edition is typically through Swing Design. It's a website. They sell a bunch of machines and software. So Swing Design typically has it 50% off for $50. And everyone always asks me, is that like per month, per year? That's lifetime. And I think that even gives you like 3 licenses. I bought Silhouette once 7-8 years ago. And I've had several new computers and stuff. You can remove a license on an old computer and like keep it going. So $50, like that's one of my favorite things about Silhouette is just it's so cheap and it does nearly everything. There's a couple tools I don't love, like curve text. It's a little clunky in Silhouette. But for the most part, I've done some pretty complicated designs in Silhouette and haven't had any issues. So for what most of us are doing, it's very capable of, doing any laser design you need.
I agree. The few times I've used it, I thought, hey, this learning curve's not bad. At
Right?
all. Not at all. And if you're coming from something else like Illustrator, there are a lot of similarities.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say, even as an Illustrator user, I would say, hey, if you're having trouble with Illustrator, strongly consider
I agree.
Silhouette
Yeah,
because I think it has all of the most important parts.
it does.
Like Illustrator is full of things you're never going to touch.
Right.
Ever.
It's for like a major graphic designer. It can be a little excessive for what a lot of us are.
Absolutely,
are
it can.
doing.
So,
Yeah.
so I recommend it for anybody who's having trouble with something like Illustrator or even Inkscape. So
Mhm.
it's really great. So let's talk a little bit about some tips you have here. And I'm
Okay.
struggling to not sneeze on air, which is going to be fantastic if I do.
Do
I
it.
sure hope my face explodes in front of everybody. It'll be fantastic.
It'll be great.
So I'm not emotional. I'm just trying not to sneeze. Uh, so
Okay.
let's talk about a couple things. First thing you're going to talk about, I think, is things like compound paths and welding and subtracting, that
Yes.
kind of thing. If anybody out there, if you use Illustrator, this would be your Pathfinder features. In Lightburn, it's the Boolean, Boolean features, which I think Inkscape calls it the same thing. So
Yeah.
these will be similar if you've used it somewhere else. That's what these are about. So if you want to go ahead and get your screen ready, I will bring it up as soon as you're ready.
I am ready.
Okay. I am not seeing it to share it for you yet.
Oh, sorry. I lied.
Okay.
Just kidding. I'm just keeping it on your
So as she's getting ready, these will be tools that I think if you're not using them, I think you'd be surprised. You'll use them more than you might think. I use little parts like these almost every day, subtracting something from someone else, something else, that kind of thing. All right.
Okay, I'm ready for real now.
All right. Great. So walk us through those tools a little bit, and I'll ask some questions along the way. And if
Okay.
anybody in the chat has questions, feel free to jump in there, and I will grab them as soon as I can.
Okay. So the first one I'm going to cover is compound paths and welding. Now, compound paths was one of the most confusing things for me to understand for a while. I kind of just figured it out by a bunch of trial and error. But one perfect example that I always use when trying to explain these is ornaments. So I'm just going to make just a basic circle here with the shapes tool on the flexi shapes tool on the left. I'm going to switch back to select so that I can do an offset, do internal offset, and let's do, I don't know, 0.3. Oh, no, that's not right. There we go. So a lot of people, when they're new to Silhouette, to adding personalization or things to, especially an existing file, because a lot of people in the beginning will buy files just to learn everything.
Yeah.
And then when you do that, and say you have, an Easter tag or an ornament that you want to add a name to, it can be really difficult for some people to figure out how to weld this name that, the personalization that they're adding.
Yes.
So let me adjust the font. This is one of my favorite because it connects even that first letter to it. And so then I'm going to first weld this name since it's cursive, script, whatever. And then the thing that I always see people do is they're like, oh, okay, I made my circles, or maybe they bought the file and everything's separated. And then they'll go to select this and they'll, right click weld, and they're like, wait, what's happening? Why didn't that work?
Yep.
Well, when you're welding shapes to each other, you need to make sure that each individual shape is a compound path. Otherwise, it doesn't recognize what you're trying to do. So first, what you need to do instead is select those two circles or your full shape of your ornament or Easter tag. Right click and, not weld. You right click and then compound path. And then now I can select them both and making sure that I'm pointing at the screen like you guys can see that. Making sure that there's overlap on each side so that it's not just floating in the center. And then we're going to weld it. And now we have a complete shape with everything together. You're not losing that inside circle, whatever. So that was my first tip, is the making sure that your separate shapes that you're trying to weld together are compound paths, especially if there's loose pieces like that inside circle. Yeah, that's the first one. Should I move on to the second one? Is somebody there? Hello? Can everybody hear me?
Yes, can hear Mark.
Okay. Well, since Mark disappeared, I guess I will move on to the next tip, I guess, that I have, and that is the subtract tool. So this is another one where I struggled in the beginning. Sometimes it would work and sometimes it wouldn't work, and I couldn't figure out why that was. So when you're using the subtract tool, and the best way that I can think about it, or that I can describe it, is think about like a cookie cutter. So you have like this outside shape, right, is the cookie. And the part that I want to subtract out of that is the cookie cutter. And so I'm going to use just another random shape, do a star. And then while we're on here, I wanted to show you too, let me zoom in. If you ever see these little toggles, you can adjust the amount of, points or whatever on here with that shape. So that's just another thing that you can customize when doing a lot of these flexi shapes. I'm going to go back to select tool and move this more to the center, make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to select them both and get my shape centered in the middle. And then I'm going to fill the square with black so that we can see when it's actually subtracted, because otherwise it's just going to look exactly the same. And the star that I placed my cookie cutter is, you can see the red line. And so you know that it's on top. If the square shape that I made is on the front, the subtract isn't going to work, because basically this is your cookie cutter, this square. So I'm going to send that to the back to make sure our star is on the front. I'm going to select them both and go over to the modify panel. And then you click on subtract, and there you go. So that is the other tool that even myself got really hung up on when I was learning stuff in the beginning, because I didn't have my layers in the right order, and I was trying to subtract the wrong one, basically, so it wouldn't work sometimes.
That's really good. And by the way, yes, I was muted. I am not an expert. I touched my microphone, and there's a by the way, I just got this microphone, and there's a very touch sensitive mute button right here.
Yeah.
I didn't know it. So this is really great. So let me ask you a question about what you just did there.
Yeah.
Just so I understand it. So if you did have it in the wrong order, if you had the star like in the back, it just simply would seem like it's not doing anything, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And another very important tip that I just thought about for silhouette is, so it's hard to explain. I explained it well in my course, so I'd have to look and see. But sometimes so if we go back, right, and let me remove the fill on this. If I select this, right, select both of these, make it a compound path, and then fill this with black, right?
Yep.
It does the same thing, kind of. So it looks exactly the same as when I did the cookie cutter way and subtracted it out. But if I send this file to my laser is going to see both shapes and not the star subtracted out. So like if I'm trying to do a reverse engrave here, it's not going to recognize that black shape with the star cut out. So you have to make sure that you subtract any pieces that you want removed from that solid shape. For cutting, it'll work because it's just recognizing the lines. But for engraving, that's something I ran into in the beginning, because for vinyl, it didn't matter. When I was doing something, I make something a compound path, it would look great. Well, then when I went to engrave this ornament, it was not recognizing the pieces that I subtracted out of a filled shape. And I couldn't figure out why, because on my screen, it looked great. But when I went to run it on my laser, it didn't translate right. And that's because I needed to actually subtract that it was text from that shape. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question on silhouette. If you were to take this thing you just made and drag it over to the gray off of your workspace, can you see it in the gray? Yeah, there you go. I use that trick all the time to make sure I can actually see through my star.
Yep.
I just drag it over there. And if my star is solid white or the black is solid black, that tells me right away, oh, Mark, you didn't get it. Or if I drag it over something else to see, can I see through it? That's
another fun fact, and something that I only learned actually recently, was, say I'm working on a design that is white, right? So if I fill this shape with white, but typically your artboard is white, you can't tell that it's actually filled, right? Until you pull it off. And sometimes I would work in a gray area so that I could see things properly. But in silhouette, you can actually change the color of your artboard. So you go to page setup, and then I could make it black or red if I wanted to. And again, it's always been there, I'm sure, but I just didn't even think about it until I either saw somebody else who had a different color, or ran into this situation where I'm doing something that's white and I need to see the contrast, and found it then.
That's so good. Man, oh God. See, somebody got this trick for the first time just now, and it's going to make a big difference for them. So for the rest of you who think you might have know it for a while, remember back to when you didn't know it, okay? Because when you learn those things, it's huge. That's
Yeah.
great. I love it. Let me ask you one more kind of backwards one of that one.
Yeah.
And it may be really straightforward. It is, but if this is already a compound path, and for some reason I need to
Yeah.
uncompound it, to
hmm
show us how to do that.
So, and that I is another question that I get a lot, because especially when people buy a file, they didn't create it themselves. So they don't know what's compounded, what's not, what's just grouped.
Right.
Because grouping and compounding is not the same thing. But a lot of times people will buy a file and they need to ungroup it more, or so basically you want to ungroup it as much as you can until that ungroup button, goes away. And then if you're still having pieces that are connected and you need to separate them, then it's just like when we compounded it, right click, release compound path. And then another thing to note is that I typically don't use hotkeys, but if you're a hotkey person, there's tons of hotkeys for everything that you're doing in Silhouette. Basically the Control C functions, but you can use those instead of the right click. But that's how you release it. And then again, same thing if you want to put it back, right click, make compound path.
That's great. I do. I bet you do too. I feel like some of the best tools are under the right click. A lot of them are. Not
Yes.
all of them, but a lot of
Well,
them
and
are.
this is a good time to mention the tool that you and I both found through others, many years into using our softwares, and that's the paste in front. So what I was doing was I was trying to cut out a patterned background from a particular shape for a watch band file. Someone was having struggles. They didn't want there to be a bunch. It was a cheetah print, and she didn't want the cheetah print to go too far past the watch band, because that's extra engraving and time that you don't need to waste beyond it. Instead of engraving that whole rectangle, she really just wanted to engrave that watch band shape, so she needed to cut it out. And when you subtract something like a shape from a pattern, say my pattern was cheetah print behind this square, right? When I subtract the square from that print, or the watch band from that cheetah print in the back, you lose that original shape that you subtracted. Well, then I still need that shape, because that's my guide, that's my outline, maybe it's your cut line. And I was copying. So this is what I used to do. I'd copy,
Yep.
Control C, Control V, right? And I pasted it. Well, then I was going through, it makes me laugh now that I did this for years. And I'll go through and I'd line it up and I try to get it, do this, and I get it exact. And I'd be like, yeah, I think that's good. And then I'd zoom all the way in. And I'm like, yep, okay, lined up, right? Well, no. Instead, you could select, wrong one. Select the star, okay, come on. Select the star shape. And instead of Control C, Control V, I forget what the other one, I think it's Control F. But I can instead, copy, Control C, paste in front. And it cracked me up when I do that. And now there's two of them. There's one in front and one behind.
It's perfect.
Perfectly in front. And
yes.
When you were mentioning the right click tool, it's always been there. It's right here. It's always been there. I looked straight past it every time. And I don't know that I even knew really what it meant or when I could use it. And yeah, I did that cheetah tutorial and subtracting out, the watch band shape. And someone messaged me, very cautiously, and was like, hey, I don't know if you know, but there's probably an easier way. And I'm like, oh my God, please. And I tagged her. I think I mentioned her name in my course. All of those tips are super helpful, because when you're self-taught, you just do typically the first way you figure out that works.
Yep.
You don't really look for an alternative that might be faster unless you find it accidentally. Or I often find those kind of things when I watch somebody else work and I see them do something, but they did it different than I did. And I'm like, wait, how did you do that? Do that again.
And it could be so minor, and you're like, no, stop the train.
And they're
Stop,
like,
stop, stop.
what?
What did you
Because it's
just do?
normal for them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. And if you guys are from another program, for Illustrator, it's called Paste in Place, not Paste in Front. Same thing though, but it's pasting it in place where it got it from.
Right. And didn't you learn that? Who did you learn Paste in Front from? Was it Tyler or someone
It's
else?
Tyler. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Tyler. And he looked at me like I had, 3 heads. He's like, what do you mean you don't know how to do that? It's like, I've never heard of it. And,
Right.
of course, he's a great friend, but I'm sure he was thinking, you've done this for a living for how long?
Right, exactly.
In fact, I'm with Denise. I was today years old. Yes, that's exactly yes. This is great. So paste in front, paste in place. You can get there by the right click. There's probably I think it's probably under edit as well.
I think it's Control F. Well, that's the other thing I cover in the course too, is that everything you do, a lot of it you can right click. A lot of it is a menu at the top or one of these, so here, the panels.
Yep.
If you go to panels, I'm pointing to the screen again, like you guys can see it. Modify, offset, page setup, all of that is right there, right? But then it's also right here on the side, page setup, modify, offset. So almost everything is in at least 2 to 3 different places. And the best place is the place that makes the most sense to you.
Yes.
Some people I'm sure go to view or panels every time, and some people just go to the right-hand side. One, for the longest time, was trace. Whatever this is, I think it's like a butterfly or some kind of shape icon for the trace panel. But for some reason, that icon never spoke trace to me.
Yes.
So I would always have to go to the panels and then select trace because I could never remember in the beginning which one, was actually the trace panel.
That's so good. So before we go any further, I just want to say, if anybody has any questions about Silhouette, even if it's not one of the ones we're covering, drop it in the chat. We'll see if we can get there. We'll see if we can get there. If we can't, again, you can find all of, in fact, I'll do this real quick so you can see. You can find all of Crystal's content and all of the links in the description here. Just grab any one of those. You can follow the trail back to get to where you need to go. But she's got just great stuff. So definitely ask. Denise said, I just look for the piece of toast on the right side, on the icon on the right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was like, piece of toast, and got it.
Yeah. That's great.
What else? Another thing I was going to say, I don't have a ton of them yet, but I'm always looking for suggestions. But on my YouTube channel, which is also Riley Black Designs, I have several silhouettes, short tutorials, and almost all of them were specific questions I have. And I started doing that because a lot of times it's much easier for me to show them than trying to type it up in text. I can show you in a 2-minute video. It can take me 10, 15 minutes to write it all out in words. I'd rather just show you where everything is. So I have maybe under 10 videos, but I have some on it's the silhouette, I think Silhouette for Lasers section on YouTube. But I'm always looking for suggestions. So if you're wondering how to use a certain tool or how to do a specific project and you don't mind me turning it into, YouTube, obviously if it's like a private project, just send me a DM and I can do it, that way. But there's the free tutorials as well. And I honestly encourage those if you're ever considering my course, because those short tutorials kind of gives you an idea of my teaching style to see if I'm kind of the right fit for you, because, not everyone is the right fit for your learning style. I'm kind of all over the place, a little bit of ADHD squirrel going on. but I
I don't know
bring
what you
that
mean.
in most of the time, yeah, in the course.
That's so good. So I just want to mention again that Crystal, she's going to be teaching at our conference this summer. So it's August 28th through the 30th. If you can join us, we'd love to have you. You can get more information at nextlevellaserevents.com. It's a good, you don't necessarily have to rush to get your ticket today, but what I would say is that hotel rooms will start to run out. It's a big place.
I gotta do that
We'd
too.
love to have everybody stay in the same place, though. So consider that if you're going to go, grab the hotel link that's on this website here because you'll get it a whole lot cheaper through here than you will through the hotel. So check that out. But if you like her style, and I think everybody should, she's going to be teaching all of this stuff and more at the conference. It's going to be great. You'll get a chance to. She's going to have a 90-minute class, so you're going to learn a lot, and you'll be able to ask her questions as well. And yeah, she's going to be there. So let us know if you have any other questions. But I think you were going to talk about.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just saw this
No,
one.
you're-
I couldn't find the toast when I updated. It's now a butterfly. Okay. Yep. And that's a perfect example. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, oh, and then as soon as you figure it out, then all of a sudden they'll, update the icons and move it somewhere, change the icon slightly, and you're like, where did it go?
And there's a bunch of comments coming in now. First of all, she's a great teacher. Yes, she is a great teacher. And Mary asks, will your course go over nodes? How to adjust them in existing files?
Like she knows that that's what we were going to cover next.
It is. It is.
Okay, let me get my screen back up again.
So while Crystal's getting that ready, 2 parts is I'll ask you, does your Silhouette for Lasers course cover nodes?
It does.
Okay. So you guys out there, you can grab that course and you can buy that course and you can learn about nodes there. We're also going to cover it just for a couple minutes here. And then she's going to touch on it this summer as well. Yes. So whichever way works for you. Yeah.
And side note, anybody who's watching who wants the course, send me a message and I'll send you a little discount code because in May for my birthday, everything's going to be discounted. And you can get a little jump on that discount, but just send me a message and I'll sneak you an early code to take advantage of that. So
excellent. So let's talk a little bit about nodes. I'm going to put this back on the screen for you, and everybody who's have a question about nodes, just watch this and let us know if you have any more questions. So take it away. Talk to us about nodes.
So with nodes, this was again one of the things that I struggled with in the beginning because being self-taught, I didn't know what to actually call things properly in order to find directions on how to get more information or skill on how to use them or adjust them, right? So I didn't even know what they were called. And finding a tutorial was nearly impossible. But when you're editing nodes, that's typically so I use it a lot when I'm trying to adjust score lines. So I'll show you 2 different ways, but the easiest way to open your node editing panel is just select the shape that you want to adjust your nodes on and double click. Oh, it opened the other one, but there we go. So I actually just added one accidentally, but here's all of your nodes. That's basically every point in your design. And you can adjust these individually as you see fit. So I can select this one, I can draw it in, pull it out. And then sometimes, I don't know why, maybe I need to zoom in. So you can also, there it is. Okay. So sometimes I think it may need to be a curved line, but you can also pull in and adjust the curvature too. So if I make, there it is. So if I make this a curve, you see these little blue dots here, and then that can adjust things, more in that way too. You can pull it, whatever direction you want to. This will adjust the other side. And then this is also where I can break a path or delete one. So now when you see these red dots, anytime you see a red dot when you're in the node editing panel, this indicates a open path. So these two are not connected. Now, if I selected it because they're so close together, it will actually reconnect those two. But if I wanted to delete it, see there, right there. If I want to delete that one, and see, then sometimes Silhouette will just decide it's going to reconnect it anyway. That's one of my favorite things that it does. So I'm going to break the path, and then now it's trolling me. So let's I'm going to do the ornament thing again, because this way I'll show you how you can add score lines for detail. So back to my select tool, move this out of the way, do offset again, make sure it's selected so it knows what you want to offset. Then type out my name again. Let's see. This is one of my favorite fonts too, 212 Moonchild Script. Right click and weld, and then we'll put this in here again. And now, as you see with this one that I did before, it doesn't look terrible, but you kind of lose any of that definition anywhere where you've welded the two together and they overlap. And so a lot of times when I'm doing, names added in, I want to see that line where it overlaps so that it almost looks like it's a separate piece, but it's one cut. So what we do then to do that is, before we weld this, you're going to make a copy of it, and everyone help me out here. I'm going to paste in front.
Yes.
Look, Control C, and then paste in front. And you can kind of see that the color changed a little bit, just slightly, because there's two layered on top of each other. And then I first need to make this a compound path. And then it doesn't really matter which one I select, because the other one that's in the back will not be selected and we'll have one left over. And that's the one that we're going to adjust to add score lines. So we have our round shape selected here. I'm going to hit Shift and select my name, and then right click and weld. And now you can see that that copy that I had sitting there in the back still has the outline. To help me, I then select that name. I change it to a different color. Blue is my score color. And here also, side note, this right here, this color palette is all the Lightburn colors. So I created a custom color palette in Lightburn, or in Silhouette, with the Lightburn colors. So when I create a file, I send it to the laser within the color that coordinates with those settings.
That's so good.
That's
sneaky. That's a sneaky time saver.
Very, because what I was doing was I would create my file, then I go to Lightburn, and then I'm having to change this to pink, that to blue, that to black, and it was a pain. And I tried to choose a similar color in Silhouette, but it wasn't that same color code, so it wouldn't work. So like one I was doing before was like a teal or a blue, right? Well, that matched up to the tool setting in Lightburn, which I think is these last two. I think those are tool colors. A tool color, if you know anything about those in Lightburn, those don't cut. Those are just to help you place things, or what, I don't know them very well, but I couldn't cut it. So I'd had to change it every time in Lightburn. And if you have a bunch of little pieces, it can be really tedious. So I will change it to my score color. And then also that this color palette at the bottom, those are my branding colors. So anytime I create a new logo or new something for my business, I have all of my typical colors down here as well. So color palettes are huge for certain things. So now we're going to zoom in, and we're going to hope that Silhouette is done trolling me. And then we're going to double click and edit some nodes. So here I'm going to add a node right there because there isn't one. And I want to cut. I basically only want the score lines where I need them. I don't need this whole score line in the middle because that's going to be all cut out. So then I'm going to break the path. I'm going to add another one here, break the path, and then same thing. This one, it looks like there's already one that's pretty close. So I'll break that one, break that one. And again, you can see all the red ones are where I've broken the path. This always is tricky to me. I forget about the inside of letters sometimes when doing the score lines. Break that one. I have one more here. Break that. And I'll just select this one and break that. And then we go through. Oh, see this one reconnected. It's still trolling me. So we'll break that one. And then I'm going to select here and just start deleting. And it will end where I have broken a path and it didn't like reconnect it for me. So that one. Keep deleting through here. And then you'll have to go through and, delete all the inside nodes of the letters as well. It is very tedious, or it can be. And this is where I'm going to do a little shameless plug to Cuddle, because with Cuddle, you don't have to do all of this manually. You can, upload your file, your design, especially if it's one that you use regularly, and it will do all this tedious score work for you. Undo. But you get the idea. It keeps connecting these two here for me. But if I click off, you can see that here is where it's going to be scored, and all the red is where it's actually going to cut. So it's going to be connected, but you get that definition compared to this one where we remove the fill. It kind of, this one to me looks much better than this one.
And it's really subtle, but it's really great.
Right. It makes really such a huge difference. Yeah, it doesn't add a ton of time to your cut file. It can add a little bit more time to your designing, again, depending on what you're doing. But say that this is a design that you're doing on a regular basis, upload or create the template into Cuddle. Now, this is something I haven't done yet, but I fully intend to do. Say everyone is ordering these ornaments, right? And they're selling like hotcakes, as people like to say when they want you to buy your file. Make the file in Cuddle, and then it will do those score lines for you so that you can still get that definition and that extra detail in your files, but you don't have to do that manual node editing every single time.
I love it. So Denise has a question. Okay. I love putting you on the spot to see if you actually know the answer. I can stumble through it, but I don't know it very well.
Yeah.
Going back to your color palettes up there that you created, how did you find the exact colors that corresponded with Lightburn? How did you do that?
So that's a good question. I'd have to go back to my course because,
me too.
Again, I did
me too. I don't remember.
Like 3 or 4 years ago was when my course first came out. So you can access them somewhere. Same with Glowforge. Glowforge was really tedious in trying to find that. Let me get back to them on where you can get the Lightburn color code so that you can do it yourself. But I believe there might be a document or something. I created one in the course that literally you just use the eyedropper tool, and that's how you have the Lightburn color palette or the Glowforge color palette, whatever. You use the dropper, which is right here, and then you select that color, and you, after creating a new palette name. And you can also do, so like here, the red that I use, you can also add the hex code if you know that. So my red that I use in all of my branding is FF0000. So that's also good to know if you're doing any printing or any of that kind of stuff, just to make sure that when it's printed that it's the right red, because I hate red orange and I hate, dark red when it comes to my branding. But you can also enter the hex code here if you don't have the actual color to be able to use the dropper. But here we can even do like test. and say this is this random teal, right? If I want to add this random teal to my test palette, here I would just click the plus after I've selected that color, and now it's right here. And then when you hover over it, it'll tell you test. And then I hover over this one, maybe. Come on. Tell me. No, maybe I didn't name it. Who knows? But this one says test.
That's great. And I found the link for the Lightburn documents where you can download your color
Nice.
palettes.
Yes.
So I dropped that in the chat. And then from there, you guys, you can do that. And then from there, follow what Crystal said here to make your own custom palette.
Create a new color palette name. And then you basically select the color, create the color. And then when you hit add, so say if I select the purple, and now that the purple is selected, I just click the plus sign, and now it's part of our new color palette.
Man, that is small, but that is small, but it is not small. That is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it really saves time. So here's an example. Red is my cut color for 1/8 inch acrylic because that's typically what I cut the most, right? Yeah. But when I need to do 1/4 inch, I use pink. Now this is a fill. I'd obviously want, let me undo that. The line color, I'd select pink here. And now when I upload this into Lightburn, it's going to be ready to go in and cut the 1/4 inch acrylic instead of the 1/8 inch.
That's great. That's so good. Yeah. Man, there are so many little tips that you've sprinkled in here that could, any one of these could change somebody's day. So this is so good. Yeah. So good. Denise said that's perfect. Angela said that's a huge help. So that's fantastic. Fantastic. We've just got a couple minutes left. Is there just any other, when you're thinking about all the people you've taught over the last few years, I know it's a lot.
Right.
Is there any other kind of thing that maybe people get hung up on, or that maybe you feel like there's a tip that, like you said, the paste in front. Right. Is there any other little sneaky tips like that? Maybe one more that you could share with us, or something that you learned that was a big deal for you when you learned it?
Well, so I can show them how that knife tool actually works. Ooh, I have two. Let's see what we have time for.
Yeah, do it.
So dashed lines. When you have this line, right, and you want it to be dashed. So the first time this happened to me was when I was creating a file for a mask. It was during the pandemic. Everything pandemic related was selling like hotcakes, and I needed to do the little thread lines on a face mask. And when you create a dashed line in Silhouette, so here's my line selected, and here's where you can adjust your line style, right? So say I make this a dashed line. I upload this into Glowforge, Lightburn, wherever, Xtool software. It's going to show up as a solid line because it doesn't understand those dash lines or the line styles. Same with if I increase the thickness. If this is a cut line, and actually even if it's an engrave, it recognizes a line as a line. You cannot increase the size of a line by upping the line weight, and it's not going to make a bigger cut. That's just the size that it cuts, right. AKA your kerf, is set. Right. It is what it is. If you want a thicker line, especially if you're engraving, the way you do that is you basically have to offset it and create, a compound path, and then now you can have a thicker line. It's basically a shape instead of, a line. So I'm going to put this back down to, I typically do it on 0 when I'm doing it, but the way that you can do this, and I actually learned this from Victor, is you turn it into a dashed line, and especially these corners. So when I did that, the mask file, there's all the, it's rounded and there was some curved dashed lines. I had to make it a line, and I went through and I manually cut all of those gaps because, again, I couldn't
Oh,
figure out how to get Glowforge at the time to recognize the dash. So you go to modify and then you select divide, I believe. And then, let's see. Is it divide? No, detach line.
Would you mind zooming in a little bit on your
Sure.
dashed lines just so we can see it? Yeah, that's a little help. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, and then, let's see. Maybe release. Okay, see, now, there we go. Okay, so let's undo that. Go back a few. Okay, so here's my dashed line here. It's a compound path right now. I release it, really. Okay, detach line, release. There we go. So now each individual dash, maybe, come on, is its own line. And this, when I zoom out, will be recognized. You'll want to group it so that you don't have a bunch of lines floating around. But this will be recognized by the laser software and actually give you that dashed line.
That's great. I don't know if I use the right terms or not, but it's now a shape instead of a line. I don't know if that's probably not the right words, but
right, yeah. But I mean, it's that same premise because, again, it's like adding line weight. Yes, you can see that line weight in the software, but when you upload it into a laser software, a line is still that line. You cannot change that thickness of it unless it's a filled shape.
That's so
and
good.
then really quickly before we go off, I'll show you the awesome knife tool. So here's another shape. One I use in the course, actually. So let's do that. I do an egg. So we'll do an egg shape. Then you go down to your knife tool. And here's the solid and outline. So if I just did outline, did this kind of shape, it cuts it in half, but you can't even see because it doesn't close that shape. But if I do solid, maybe, I need to have this one. Oh, there it is. So it's already cut, but let's see, undo, go back to the knife tool. Oh, let me undo a few times. So it's still solid shape. Okay, the knife tool, solid. I usually change this to be fancy to triangle and then not auto apply because I like to change the shape sometimes. So now I get it, however I want it to look. And then now that I'm ready for it to cut that shape, I click on apply. And now we have a cracked egg.
Oh, that's cool.
Right? But
I would have taken a lot longer to do that.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a similar thing in Illustrator, but that key thing is solid if you want it to be a closed path, outline if you want it to be open. And these icons are actually pretty good at like showing you, which one you're going to get. You choose your line style. And then I always unselect auto apply because that way I can adjust, the jagged if I want them closer together, further apart, taller, shorter. And then once I get the line the way I want it, then I click on apply once I'm ready to apply it.
That's so good. All right, I'm gonna remove your screen here, just bring you back to the regular here. Man, what good stuff. I hope somebody watches this later and I hope somebody bookmarks somewhere because there's so many good little tricks here. And any one of these could save you, I don't mean minutes, I mean hours over time.
Yeah.
And maybe like Crystal was joking about it, but she's not joking. We both have done the long way around something because we didn't know how to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
well,
and
I mean, when
hopefully,
you're self-taught, you just go with what works until you find out otherwise. And sometimes that's accidentally, sometimes that's watching your friend or a tutorial or whatever. There's tons of different ways, but again, you just do what works. Mm-hmm.
No shame here. If you don't know, ask. And you said it earlier. I think you said it is. If you didn't know what something was called, you don't know what to search for either. I mean,
the node editing. I didn't know what to call those little dots. I didn't know that they were called nodes. So I didn't know how to figure out how to look up tutorials on more information on how to adjust them. So then when I finally figured out it was nodes and node editing, I was like, oh. So, again, those are little things that you learn by doing and getting that exposure, to it. And then you're like, oh, okay, then you can look into it more. Having the terminology is honestly one of the biggest things to learn in the beginning, because that's how you can look into learning more about that particular thing.
Absolutely. So real quick, you can find Crystal a lot of places. There's a bunch of links in the description of this video. You can also find her at keychainthingies.com. You can find her group at Silhouette for Lasers. She actually got a couple different groups. And of course, you can find Riley Black Designs on Instagram. You can also find the Riley Black podcast. Lots of places to learn so much from her. So please go follow her wherever you can find her. And then we've got her, of course, at the Next Level Laser Conference this summer. We'd love to have you guys. If you have any questions about that, I'd love to answer it for you. And you can go to the website there and get more answers. And you can always message me if you have any questions. But Crystal, what a pleasure. This has been great. Just as
there's
always,
so many extra things.
So many things.
I love it.
Yeah, it's so good. So guys, if you have any questions and you're watching this later, don't hesitate to drop a question and we'll be happy to help you. But in the meantime, follow her everywhere and interact with her and check out her classes. And if you want to come to the conference, we'd love to have you as well.
Yeah, there's one I didn't mention.
Oh, yeah, please.
And that is my LEDs course, LEDs with RBD. So that's one of my newest ones that I came out with at the end of last year. And that basically teaches people how to make LED signs with the strips and no soldering.
And where can they find that too? I already know, but tell them where can they find that?
LEDs with RBD. But to keep it simple, if you go to keychainthingies.com, at the top, I have my Silhouette course, the LED course, and then all the other stuff. And I think even the podcast and stuff. So you can find most of it there or just message me.
Sounds good. So good. Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. Crystal, stick around. Everybody else, we'd love to see you in all the groups and let us know how we can help you make great things faster. We are here for you. So have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you in the groups. And I'm going to stop hitting my microphone on the way out. Bye.